Hello, everybody. Welcome to Galactic Wisdom. And sorry, I've got noises going on outside. I'm not sure what's happening out there. Now, today I'm going to talk about judging others. But we didn't quite get through everything that I wanted to get through last week. Last week was a tall white special. And I shared with everybody my investigations into the tall white aliens that live out in the desert outside of Las Vegas. And I didn't quite get through all of the videos that I wanted to show you. So I'm going to show you a few minutes of video now. I'm just going to let you know what's going on though. You know, the easiest way to connect with advanced non-human entities is not to try and approach them physically, because they don't want to appear physically. It's too dangerous for them. The easiest way to communicate with them is astrally or telepathically or spiritually. And so what I do very often is I lead people through meditations, through astral projections to different non-human entities. I lead people in remote viewing of these beings and remote communication with them. And I have a group where there's a number of very talented psychics, and even regular people coming in can sometimes get psychic perceptions during my meetings. And we communicate with different non-human entities. And I'm going to play you videos that describe just a couple of very interesting situations, and I will just I will prep you briefly for what you're going to see. Two situations. The first situation is every Thursday evening, so actually in a couple of hours, every Thursday evening, I guide people through an astral projection to a craft, a very large craft in space, where a council or a group that we call the Galactic Council meets. And we go to them every Thursday evening and communicate with them. We ask them questions, try and understand the reality of the solar system, and our place in it, and all of these different beings. And they give us assistance and support and guidance. And this here is, I'm going to show you a short clip of one of our members who went on one of our astral projections to the Galactic Council craft. And you're going to hear her talking about a tall white that she encountered astrally when we visited the Galactic Council craft. I host frequent online events in which we meditate, astrally project to different non-human intelligences, and remotely communicate with them. During one of those events, a tall white being seemed to give one of my psychic friends some kind of ultra-dimensional positioning technology.
A couple of years ago, we were doing a remote viewing, and we were going to the Galactic Council. And as we actually got onto the craft, it's this area that it's like a meeting place for everyone. There's all kinds of activity going on, and the group was right there in the center area right there. And this tall white approached me. He was extremely tall. He was like 9 feet tall. He had long, very white hair. It was almost white, and he was wearing something that looked like a bio kind of like suit. There was like this weird collar that kind of came up. It was white, but the rest was a blue, but it would shimmer. It was like it was his bio suit. And as I'm standing there, I'm seeing this being, and this being walks straight up to me, and he bows his head and does this. And he hands me this triangular looking like device. And I see it. And as I look into this device, it's like a hologram inside the device. And it came up and it showed me this like star system. And it looked like Orion's belt was in this. And then I heard you say, okay, we're moving into the chamber where we're actually going to be at the table, talking to the beings. And as I begin to turn and I'm raising my head up and I turn like this device disappears and goes into my forehead. And I can, to this day, it's there. I want to say that it's like a location device. It's also like a pictograph, like showing me, hey, this is what our galaxy looks like. This is where we're coming from.
And so it actually has happened on several occasions where during astral projections to communicate with different beings, they have given us spiritual devices, spiritual technology. And when we've taken them into our hands, they have sunk into our hands and become part of our spirits. We have gained spiritual technology, kind of like wearing a wristwatch, but one that sort of sinks into your spirit and becomes a part of you. Now, this is all done with our, we want it to happen, we request it to happen. So, they're not like implanting things in us against our will. But it's very, very cool that we can use these technologies to do various different psychic, supernatural things. Another situation was when we astrally projected just a few weeks ago to Area 51. And as a group, I led us through the meditation, the astral projection, and we came up over the area where the tall whites live, and we looked down, we kind of said hello, and very respectfully, we moved over Area 51, and we looked down, and we didn't know who was down there, so we were being very respectful and polite, and we went down to Area 51, and we ended up going down under the ground and having a look around and connecting with different beings there. And this is the experience of my good friend Laura Walker when she went under the ground during that astral projection. And when we, as a group, astrally projected to Area 51, which is close to where the tall whites live, a tall white entity seemed to meet us there and act as our guide and protector.
I suddenly started seeing these tunnels, and as we were going through, it was just weird, but all of a sudden I felt a presence walking up behind me, and then this hand lands on my shoulder like this. And this hand stayed there pressing. And as I walk, it was like an escort, and I realized this is a tall white. This is a male tall white, but I never could turn around to look. That was not permitted. Don't turn around and look. Just go forward. I'm with you, is what I heard. I'm with you. And we went through, well, wherever I went in this remote viewing, the presence of this tall white remained with me the entire time, and I could feel his hand on me the entire time. Now, when we were finishing up this remote viewing, the hand just went away, and I could hear and feel love. I could feel it, just love vibrate. And I am with you. And that's all I sensed. And it just completely disappeared at the end of the remote viewing.
How do you interpret that? Do you think that that tall white male was guiding you or protecting you?
Both.
So we did an astral projection to Area 51, and you had a guide and a protector who was a tall white.
Yes.
So that's what we know about tall whites. Now we're going to do remote viewing to tall whites in just 2 or 3 minutes. But we're going to get ourselves comfortable and close our eyes and relax our body. Okay, we're not going to watch the end of that video because I start to actually lead people through a meditation and an astral projection. But that's what we know about tall whites. We have established a friendship with them. We know some of them by name. We communicate with them quite a lot. We connect with them. They are known to follow me around when I go touring. They're my sort of protection. They They're part of my protection team and my support team. They like what we're doing. And what we're doing is spreading the idea of universal peace, unconditional caring, unconditional love, and the promotion of universal well-being. It's very non-human, very non-violent, and they like that. So that's what they're doing. They're supporting everything we're doing here. And I connect with a number of different beings, and I'm just going to give you a little summary of some of the connections I've had recently before I start talking about the subject of today, which is about justice or revenge. We reached out and connected with what is categorized as an EBE type 1 in a Majestic 12 document that was leaked from 1954. And these EBE1s look almost human. They're a little less than 5 foot tall. They look fairly humanoid, but they have a larger crania, larger heads. The eyes are fairly small. They're darker than human eyes. The whites are gray. The irises are dark brown or black. And they have 4 fingers, 4 digits. They don't have thumbs, but one of the digits is able to, it's nearly opposable so that they can pick things up. They have bowed legs and proportionately large feet. Their ears are smaller and come down lower on their faces or their heads. We reached out to EBE1s, and it's a species that doesn't get much attention. They kind of look almost human, but they're shorter, and they're definitely a step towards looking like sort of greys. And when there's one person astrally projecting and they see something, you can't really prove that their perceptions, their psychic perceptions, are real, because it's just one person seeing something. It could be imagination. And honestly, I know people that when they do astral projections and remote viewing, a lot of what they say that they see is imagination. But when we are in a group of people and 5 or 6 people all see the same thing, then we've got logical confirmation that what we're seeing is true. And we had 4 or 5 people see 4 or 5 EBE1s. We approached them, and the EBE1s just sort of turned around and looked at us like, this is unexpected. They were kind of shocked and surprised what's going on here, because we were about 50 human spirits all astrally projecting to them. And they just sort of stayed there, frozen in that position for our communication. But we talked to them. We told them that we approached them in peace, and they liked that. And they communicated with us. They responded to us. We had a little conversation. And so we, for the first time, were able to establish a little communication with EBE1s. And we asked to see where they live, what their environment was. And to be honest, I was expecting them to be in spacecraft that are flying around, but everybody saw them in underground areas. And 1 or 2 people saw that some of them are held captive in underground areas by humans. So that's a little bit sad. I wish we could do something about that. That's the EBE1s. Let's see, the praying mantis beings. Oh, what have I got here? Okay, here's a picture of an EBE2. And I guess if you make the eyes smaller and the mouth a little wider, and the body a little less skinny, you're sort of looking at EBE1s. What else do I have? Here's a mantis being, a classic mantian or mantis being. We reached out and tried to connect with them the other day, and we were successful. We did connect with the mantis beings, and they've always been very helpful. They will show up at the start of events and help us to connect with other beings. They actually helped us connect with the EBE1s. And what I was really hoping to do this time with our mantis being friends was to get a name for one of them, so we could say, hey, Jim, can you come and talk to us? And so we asked, can you tell us your name? And what everybody heard were two sounds. Some of them were click sounds, like that. And superimposed, I suppose, underneath that, people were hearing a lower purring sound, a bit like a cat purring. And it was a very interesting combination of sort of lower purring frequencies and higher clicking sounds that these mantis beings were producing. Now, I don't talk click purr or purr click. And so we said to the mantis beings, thank you for telling us your name. We can't talk. We can't utter those sounds. Is there a human name that we could use in our conversations with you? And so we all listened, and people were hearing different things. And we looked at all of the names that came through. They weren't the same name, but a cuss sound or K was very common. And I guess that's similar to click. And there were also t sounds and also lu sounds like Lucas, Luku. And so we looked at those and we kind of averaged them together to come up with a name, Toluca. And we asked, hey, is it okay if we call you Toluca? And they said, you can call us anything you want. But the other thing we asked them is, do you have a gender? Now, the first person who answered that question after the remote viewing, I feel like they probably gave an answer. Often people who do remote viewings, if they don't hear a real answer, or sometimes they psychologically will imagine an answer, which means that whatever people say, whatever anybody else says, they're not going to be wrong. And so this person said, I think they're both male and female. I think they have them combined together. So there's male elements and there's female elements. And other people sort of followed along with that. One or two people thought more female, one or two people thought more male. After the meeting, I went away and thought about it. And for a day or two, it wasn't sitting right with me that they were both male and female. And the name Toluca sounded a bit too female to me, almost like Tallulah, from Guys and Dolls. And so I started to, in my mind, I felt like I was trying to connect with them and come up in my mind with a slightly less feminine, and I was picking up on a male vibe myself when I was connecting with these beings. And so I started to rearrange the syllables, ka, luka, ta, something like that. Anyway, I came up with a different name for them. And what's interesting, I was listening to somebody talking, Richard Doty, in an interview, talking about beings who he claimed to have seen that had praying mantis features, and the name that they were calling them was crotaloids. And what's interesting is the k and the t and the la sound that we were hearing is in that name. And I don't know how they came up with the name crotaloid. I don't know if it's a real thing or a made-up thing, like even the story that Richard Doty was talking about. But the crotala ended up sounding very similar to what I was coming up with. Three same syllables in the same order. And so I wonder if those beings were trying to communicate with me that crotaloid is what these beings are called. I don't know. But that's interesting. That's the kind of thing I do. I connected last night with Tuk Tuk. I have a friend who could do with some healing, and Tuk Tuk's always very warm and loving. I had a session, it's available free to watch, actually, a healing session with Tuk Tuk on my website, where we went to Tuk Tuk and we asked for healing. And right at the start of the video, 4 people just came straight out and said, these are healing experiences with tuk-tuk they've had in the past. It's pretty profound. If you're interested in checking that out, then go ahead and join my group here, and you'll find that healing video with a full meditation that you can participate in. You can join in with that. It's free to watch on that website. And I can't remember, you might need to join, but there's a free membership option. Yeah, healing with tuk-tuk, that's something I do quite often. This Saturday, I'm going to be hosting a UFO invitation event through my website. That's a free event if anybody wants to join. If anybody's really interested in the stuff that I'm doing and you want to come with us to the Galactic Council Craft, I don't think I have an image of the Galactic Council Craft right here, right now, but this evening we're going, so go ahead and join my group, and that's happening in Tier 2 of my group, so join Tier 2 if you want to join us this evening. Okay, so that's a summary of what I'm doing in my life. Let's talk now about judging others. And I want to say this clearly and carefully, so I'm going to follow some notes here. When we talk about judging someone, we're really talking about one or more of 3 different steps. We're talking about judging the reality of somebody's actions. We're talking about judging the morality of somebody's actions. And the 3rd step in judging someone is how we respond to someone's actions. And when we talk about judging somebody, we're really talking about any or all of those 3 things: judging the reality of what they're doing, judging the morality of what we think they're doing, and then what do we do with that? How do we respond to that? Do we sentence them? Do we give them some kind of punishment or some kind of education? Now, so in this show, I'm going to examine the extent to which each of those steps is consistent or inconsistent with my philosophies and what I consider to be actually moral. So I'm going to start by looking at judging the reality of somebody's actions. And hopefully what I talk about today will help people who are listening to, when they have to deal with people whom they judge to not be moral people. How do we deal with that? That's really what I'm sort of hoping will be the main takeaway from today. What's the ascended or moral way to deal with people in this world who are doing things that we don't like? So it's my assertion that human beings find it much harder to judge the reality of anything than a lot of people comprehend. The history of humanity is full of human beings believing things about reality that were completely incorrect. And nothing has changed. This planet is still full of human beings believing things about reality that are completely incorrect. Now, there is one situation in our lives in which we can fairly easily prove something about reality to be true. And that is when we ourselves personally, directly, and firsthand see, hear, or witness something. If someone says something to us directly, if we see, hear, or witness someone saying something themselves, then we know that they really did say that thing. If we ourselves personally, directly, and firsthand see, hear, or witness someone doing something, then we know that they really did do that thing. That's all the proof we need. We're watching them live as they're doing it. But if we hear about what someone allegedly said or did indirectly from someone else, then we don't know that to be true. We don't know it to be real. And logically and correctly, we should not accept it as being true or real or correct unless we ourselves are able to prove it indirectly. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of watching a YouTube video and the people in the YouTube video say, I was able to prove this thing. Well, listening to somebody saying that they've proved something, that's not proof for you. And that's why proving things is much harder than people realize. Knowledge is personal to us. It's in our heads. We know something or we don't know something. Somebody else tells us something they know. That's not knowledge to us yet. We have to prove it to ourselves before it becomes knowledge to us. So in order to prove something that you didn't witness, well, you have to establish a chain of evidence. And at the start of that chain of evidence, there has to be you proving some key element yourself, firsthand, directly. Just watching a video about other people proving all of the bits of evidence, that could be made up. So proving things indirectly is something that human beings have never been naturally good at. And just look at all of the beliefs that people have had throughout the years, and beliefs that people still have today. And what they're doing is, when they can't see something that's obvious, they substitute being able to know something with just taking a guess and accepting that as being true. Whether it's about God or the universe or how everything started or what happens after you die or viruses which are so tiny we can't see them, or, you know, etc. And so judging the reality of someone's actions or behavior based on other people's words or memories or posts, comments, emails, messages, articles, or videos is something that I personally strongly advise against. There are many reasons why we can't accept the words of other people as being true or correct. Sometimes people lie. Sometimes even good people lie for reasons that they think are morally justified. Sometimes it's not so much that people are blatantly lying, but that they're putting their own spin on things in ways that aren't completely honest. Sometimes people deliberately create disinformation that benefits them. You see that a lot in politics, certainly in the US, but also all around the world. Sometimes people deliberately create disinformation that disadvantages others. If other people who we might be competing with for followers or for well, it could be anything. It could be for food. It could be for money. It could be for resources. It could be for partners, relationships, anything that we compete over. If you disadvantage people who are competing with you, then it helps you. It helps people. We see a lot of that. People attacking others, disadvantaging them in order to put themselves up above others. And in order to deflect the bad things that those people are doing. Sometimes people pass on misinformation to others without realizing that it's incorrect. They hear it, they see it, they think it's correct, and they pass it on, but it's really misinformation. Sometimes when people witness things that they later then talk about, they're drunk or on drugs or tired or mentally unwell or impaired in some way, maybe by electromagnetic fields even. Sometimes when people tell you things, similarly, they're drunk or on drugs or tired or unwell in some way. Sometimes events happen so unexpectedly or fast, and that can happen during contact events. Suddenly you see a flash in the sky and you look up and it's barely still there, or it's gone already. It's hard to recall exactly what you saw afterwards. It's like, did it look like an object? Did it look close? Did it look far? People's perceptions about what they're witnessing often are unclear or incorrect. Sometimes multiple things happening at the same time. Something happens over there while something's happening over there. Well, you hear noises behind you, and then afterwards you try and remember it coherently and put it together, and your memories are not clear or accurate or correct. Now, in psychology, there is such a thing as a false memory. In reality, false memories are real things. In psychology, a false memory is a phenomenon where someone recalls something that did not actually happen, or they recall it differently from the way that it actually happened. That's quite an interesting subject. Go away and look it up. What it means is you can't trust people's memories, which is bizarre when you think, or very worrying when you think that, well, trusting people's memories is what we do so much when we're trying to prove things, for example, in a court of law, or when we're trying to convince people, hey, I saw a UFO or an alien or something. But false memories are real things. Sometimes people's imagination causes them to perceive things inaccurately, especially while meditating or dreaming. As I said earlier, when I'm leading meditations and people describe seeing different things, different beings, some of them in my mind I'm thinking, oh yeah, I know what that is, I know what they're describing. Sometimes they say something and I'm like, oh dear, I think that's your imagination. But that happens, and I apologize if that sounds like I'm criticizing those people. I'm not. I have the same problem when I'm meditating and I'm seeing things. I often don't know, did I just imagine that, or am I seeing something real? And it's not sometimes until after I listen to other people who are in the same meditation when I hear that they had exactly the same perception, and I'm like, oh great, that's what I was seeing. We saw the same thing, it must have been real. Sometimes people's emotions impair their view of reality. If you're feeling upset, sometimes what you see or think you're seeing or witnessing is different. That can happen when we see alien beings. You see an alien beings that looks like a vicious, big green muscular humanoid with a velociraptor head on its head, which is basically what reptilians look like. Do I have a picture of a reptilian? Yes, I think I do. If something like this jumps up at you while you're meditating, sometimes fear kicks in and you can perceive I'm being attacked, when actually no, that's our friend Icod coming to actually protect you, most likely, or even heal you. So sometimes people's expectations impair their view of reality. Sometimes people's beliefs, in fact, a lot of the times, people's beliefs impair their view of reality. A lot of people just tune out when I start talking about things that go against their beliefs. Like if I start talking about evolution or natural selection, it's like, no, don't want to know. I'm going to tune out. If I start talking about how the Earth was created or the Big Bang, no, not interested. People's beliefs affect their perception, their view of reality. Sometimes people are unable to mentally separate what they witness with what they deduce about what they witnessed. So when I interview people who are telling me, oh, I saw something, I saw a UFO or something, when I interview them, when they start talking, they might start saying something like, okay, yeah, a Pleiadian UFO landed, a Pleiadian craft, and out came the Pleiadians. I'll have to kind of stop and say, well, hang on a second. Is that an interpretation? What did you actually see? Because what they actually saw was a flying saucer or a spacecraft come down and land, and it's their interpretation that it's Pleiadian, but that's just an interpretation. Even when they see beings that might look like Pleiadians, that's just an interpretation. So when people tell you about something, when they give you some kind of information, you've got to be careful, because a lot of what they tell you they saw might not actually be what they saw, but actually what they think they saw. So believing what people say is intellectually invalid. Accepting as being true what anybody tells you is intellectually invalid. Trusting people is intellectually invalid, no matter how well you know them. Now, this is hard because, beliefs and trust and faith, having faith in people, things like this are usually taught as very positive things, but they're really not. They're intellectually invalid. And so I might sound like I'm being a bad person by saying these things, but what I'm trying to get at here is we're trying to get to the truth. And you can actually be a far more moral person if you base your actions on truths rather than things that you just accept as being true without proof, beliefs. So with the first of those three stages of judging someone, so we had, if we judge someone, it's judging the reality of their actions, judging the morality of their actions, and then how do we respond to what they do? How do we respond to their actions? With the first of those three steps of judging someone, it's only valid to judge the reality of someone's actions when you personally, directly and firsthand see, hear, or witness those actions yourself. That is a level of proof which is quite accessible, and indirect levels of proof are actually surprisingly hard to access. Even though, and that's where most people's beliefs lie. You should never accept as being true anything that anyone ever tells you, well, about anything, certainly about anybody else, unless you're a fully trained research scientist or forensic scientist with a perfect grasp of how to prove things indirectly. If you're very good at using the scientific method, if you're able to, if you know intellectually how to prove with 100% logical certainty that the claims are true. So, I'm talking about scientists there. Science is sometimes frowned upon in spiritual communities as being what we're looking at in the spiritual or the paranormal or the alien community, that's different to science. Well, no, it's not. Science is moving in that direction. Both the science and people in the paranormal community, we're both interested in what is true. The difference is that science is proving what is true, and it hasn't quite got to paranormal things or spiritual things or alien things. But that's a limitation of science, but it doesn't mean that science itself is wrong. And the scientific methodology of how do we prove things to be true, that is what we should be applying to ghosts, spirits, paranormal phenomena, orbs, UFOs, aliens, different beings. Now, a lot of people judge the reality of things to be wrong. And I've talked about historically where people have believed in some pretty crazy things in the past to be right that are clearly not right. And it's not just about judging the reality of situations like, is there a God? Are there aliens? This session is really about judging others, judging people. And I've got in front of me an article that was posted in the BBC just a few months ago. Well, actually, now it's a year ago. A US woman was freed after 43 years in prison for a murder that she didn't commit. Can you imagine that? A woman or anybody, can you imagine anybody being put into jail for any period of time for a crime that you didn't commit? But she was in jail for 43 years and she didn't commit the murder. A woman who served 43 years for a murder she did not commit has been released after her conviction was overturned. Sandra Hem was 20 years old when she was found guilty of stabbing to death a library worker from St. Joseph, Missouri in 1980. She was given a life sentence. How is it that justice systems, that our legal system can put somebody in prison, in jail for such a long period of time? How can we get it wrong? There was no evidence that linked that woman to the crime other than a confession she gave under heavy sedation in a psychiatric hospital. So what I see is that whenever anybody's accused of anything, people's emotions kick in and engage, and people make automatic judgments, and because the emotion is, oh, that's a terrible crime, they just equate the terrible crime with whoever's been accused. And the emotion wants that person to be put in jail, wants that person to, whatever, receive the death sentence or receive some kind of punishment. But actually, I don't have it here in my notes, but over 34,000 years of time have been served in the US alone by people who were convicted and put in prison, but then later their crimes, their convictions were overturned. They were exonerated or found to be actually innocent. And probably only a very small percentage of the people who are innocent ever are lucky enough to get the appeals go through and have enough money to get lawyers who will do a good enough job to get to be able to prove that there was some kind of a mistake made. So that's the first part of judging someone, judging the reality of their actions. And I'm going to tell you, in summary, unless you see somebody doing something yourself, then give up trying to judge the reality of it, because you've got to be a very skilled detective and understand scientific methodologies for how to prove something before you can really get to the bottom of it. It's just not, you're going to make too many mistakes. The second part of judging someone is judging the morality of someone's actions. Now, different people's opinions about what kind of actions are morally right are often completely different. Different people's opinions about what kind of actions are morally wrong are often completely different. And I'm going to give you several examples. Some people think that it's morally right for women to be able to choose to have an abortion. Some people think that it's morally wrong. Some people think that it's morally right for one man to love another man. And some people think that that is morally wrong. Some people think that it's morally right to raise and kill pigs and cows and chickens to eat. And some people think that it's morally wrong. Some people think that it's morally right to burn coal, oil, and natural gas. And some people think that it's morally wrong. Some people think that it's morally right to promote religious beliefs. And some people think that it's morally wrong. Some people think that it's morally right for citizens to own machine guns. And some people think that it's morally wrong. Now, you can probably guess what side of all of those questions of morality that I'm on, but it's not I'm not going to do that here today. Don't want to offend anybody. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that about every single moral issue, there are enormous differences of opinion about what is morally right and what is morally wrong. And that's okay, because morality is subjective. Right and wrong are a matter of opinion. It's a matter of opinion how we define them, and then it's a matter of opinion what actions or behaviors we attach to those definitions. And we're allowed to have our own different opinions about morality. However, that does make the judging of anyone's morality subjective, opinion-based, and intellectually very problematic. I'm just going to take a look at the time there. Wow, 44 minutes in already. How can we judge the morality of an action if we can't agree on what's morally right and what's morally wrong? When people who have very different moral convictions from you judge you, how does that make you feel? Does it seem fair or right or valid to you? Because it isn't. And when you judge the morality of someone else's actions based on your own personal subjective moral convictions, that also isn't fair or right or valid. So what I'm trying to say here is that it might be helpful to take a little bit step back from some of these arguments and say, there isn't a universally right and wrong answer to this. It's not like mathematics where you can prove 2 + 2 = 4. It's not like a science equation like distance equals speed times time, where you can put in the numbers and come up with this is the answer. You can't put in things into equation and say that action there, that's morally wrong, that action there, that's morally right. It's a matter of opinion. Now, the truth is that we all automatically judge each other in our minds all of the time. It's natural and it's normal, and we can't help it. And it does serve a valuable survival purpose. It helps to keep us away from dangerous people, and it helps to draw us towards people who might benefit us. And so, mentally, internally judging other people sort of automatically, it's nothing that any of us should feel guilty about. However, treating others negatively as a consequence of our moral judgments wouldn't, in my subjective opinion, be morally right. Being good to people should be unconditional. Being nice, kind, peaceful, respectful to people should be unconditional, in my opinion. So that then brings us to the third part of judging someone. So let's see, the first part was judging the reality. People are not so good at that unless we see it ourselves. So don't believe what anybody else tells you. The second part, judging the morality of somebody's actions. It's problematic intellectually because morality is subjective. So you got to treat your own moral judgments with a little bit of restraint. And it's okay to judge in our minds just automatically. It sort of helps us. But then sharing what you decide about the reality and morality of your judgments, that then becomes problematic, very problematic. It's the third stage, which is how we respond to our judgments. That's where harm is caused, or where good is caused if we go into it with more wisdom. So responding to someone's actions. So I'm going to split this third step into two sections. The first section is responding to actions that are aggressive or violent. Second section is responding to actions that aren't aggressive or violent. Let's talk about when we're dealing with aggressive or violent actions of somebody else. Now, I guess I'm going to be a bit careful about what I say here, because people do like to take my words and twist them. In my subjective personal opinion, I think that if somebody is coming at you trying to actually physically hit you in the moment, I would say, in my subjective opinion, that hitting them in self-defense is, to me, morally acceptable. And I think the law would agree that the use of reasonable force is a morally acceptable thing. I would say that if somebody is trying to kill you, then, and I think the law would probably agree that that, I'm sorry, I do need to check my messages because somebody may be coming here very, very soon. If somebody's trying to kill you, then using reasonable force in self-defense to protect yourself, that I think is morally reasonable. And even if that means your defense ends up killing them. Now, that's a harsh thing. I guess that's a strong thing to say on a show like this. But what I'm saying is in line with legality, that use of lethal force in defense of one's life is legal, and I guess that this country at least thinks that it's right. In my opinion, and according to the laws in most developed countries, it's morally right to use reasonable levels of violence to protect, to prevent violence from happening to you. Now, some people might argue that using reasonable levels of violence isn't putting peace first. And I actively, that's one of my biggest philosophies, put peace above everything else. However, I would argue that allowing others to be violent to you isn't placing peace above everything else. You're permitting violence, you're allowing violence. So if your intention is to stop an attacker's violence with the same level of force that they're trying to use against you, then your acts of violence are the most likely way to minimize violence. So in my opinion, stopping violence with comparable levels of violence is placing peace above everything else. It's minimizing violence. But that's as far as it goes. Attacking someone preemptively isn't morally right. Attacking someone who's a threat to us isn't morally right. Attacking someone after they've finished attacking us isn't morally right. Being violent to somebody after they've finished being violent to us isn't moral. Now, this is where it gets hard for a lot of people, because after someone has attacked them, it can feel very wrong not to respond with some kind of counterattack. And I feel that as a human being. I feel like when somebody does me wrong, when somebody attacks me, I feel the need to attack back. I feel that. And in my mind, I'm scheming about how can I attack back in a legal way that nobody will know what I've done, but I can still make my point. I can still get back at them. That's what goes through my mind. That's what goes through my feelings. And I only have a minute left, so I'm going to have to cut this short, maybe carry on next time. But the point that I would like to make is our feelings don't always guide us towards moral actions. And I'm going to go into that next week in great detail. Our feelings are not always moral. Trusting our feelings, being guided by feelings that are causing anyone to do anything dark or harmful to others for any reason, not moral. So that's my closing message to you. And I've got quite a lot more to say on this subject, so I will continue next week. Again, I would like to invite anybody here to join my Alien Contact Patreon group. Joining my group helps me, supports me to spread messages of peace and love and well-being, and helps to keep me going so I can keep talking to you on this show. And there's a lot of cool stuff going on my website, hundreds of free videos to watch and things like that. Check it out. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here today, for watching me. I wish you all peace and love and well-being. You take care. Goodbye for now.